Welcome to another iCube tutorial. In this video, we'll be learning part 2 for 2-look PLL, where we learn to solve the last layer edges in one try. For all these cases, if you want to practice them, you can just keep doing the moves that solve them until eventually it will create the case that you want to practice, and then you can solve it. So the first case that we'll be going over is this case where you have a solid back. So if you learn how to solve last layer edges, the beginner method from this channel, you already know this case. There are two solid back cases. One, the edges will need to rotate this way, and the next case, they'll need to rotate this way. So if you're looking down on the cube and they need to rotate clockwise, that would mean that this red edge needs to go here, which is right, the blue needs to go here, and the green needs to go here. So for this case, where they need to rotate clockwise, this is called a UB perm. So just for a little tip, whenever I get the solid back case, I just look at this right edge right here. If it needs to go here, it's the UB perm. If you have a solid back and you look at this edge and blue does not go here in between red, then this would be the other case, a UA perm, which we'll talk about next. So back to the UB perm, where you have a solid back and this edge needs to go here. You just do the exact same moves that we learned before. Now one more time, but fast. Now the second case we'll be talking about is the UA perm, where we have a solid back and this edge does not go here. The moves for this case will be almost exactly the same as the last one, except both U moves will be replaced with a U prime. So once you have your solid back, this edge does not go here, you will do these moves to solve the UA perm. And now one more time, but fast. The third case we'll be talking about today is when you do not have a solid back, so all four edges need to be solved. For this case, when these two edges and these two edges need to be swapped, so how you can recognize that is red, orange, orange, red, and then green, blue, and blue, green. So the edges on opposite sides need to be switched. Fourth case we'll be talking about is very similar, where you do not have a solid back, but instead of opposite edges being swapped, it's going to be adjacent edges need to be swapped. But we'll talk about that for the next case. So back to the third case, this is called an H perm, where the opposite edges need to be swapped. You can hold the cube in any orientation, and you'll do these moves to solve this case. And now one more time, but fast. And now back to the fourth case that we were talking about, where there is no solid back, but these two edges need to be swapped, and these two edges need to be swapped. Just a tip for the Z-perm algorithm, whenever you finish the moves, you'll have to do a U2 at the end. But for the advanced method, you'll be learning what is called AUF, so you won't have to worry about that U2 at the end. So I don't want to create a bad habit, so instead I'm going to teach with a U2 in the beginning. So what you want to do is when you notice you have the case where these two edges and these two edges need to be swapped, you want to make sure you start a U2 away. So the red should be lined up with orange, green should be lined up with blue, and so on. If that's too confusing for you, you can just make sure corners are good and solve the case like regular. But again, I'll be teaching it with a U2 in the beginning. So you want to hold the cube in a way that the front and the right edges will be swapped. So you don't want to hold it like this, because these two edges do not need to be swapped. So once you're holding it to where these two edges on the front and the right are ready to be swapped, you will do these moves to solve the Z-perm. Now one more time, but fast. Once you notice that these two edges on the front and the right need to be swapped, I'm going to go ahead and do a U2, and then you will do these moves to solve the case. that is all for this video where we learned part 2 of 2-look PLO. And just a fun fact, those are 4 cases for the advanced method, so whenever you get to the advanced method, you know how to solve 4 PLO cases. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Alright. Did it.